This is our first Cross-Generation Connect. The concept is for women of different ages to connect about the topics that we all care about. This particular group is an amazing, accomplished group of women, and I'm thrilled to have them all. I think that it's not just that a lot of times people think the older women teach younger women. I have personally learned so much from the younger women that are with us today. We have, our mix is, we have Barbara Lippert is here. I'm going to click on everybody. We have Barbara Lippert, Christine Coe, Jessica Byrne, Kelly Tierman, Maura Aarons-Mele, Robin Hatcher, and I'm Daryl Pollack with WOE, and we are going to be talking about moms and guilt today.
I had tremendous guilt surrounding not only working, but the fact that when my son was very young, my ex and I were going through a divorce. So it was guilt on guilt on guilt, and it was so unpleasant at home that we had a wonderful babysitter, and I took to coming home later and later because I couldn't deal with my ex in front of the baby. So he was like 4 at the time. And it was Mother's Day, and they made a card, and they dictated what they wanted to say, and the teacher wrote it. And what he said was, and maybe he was 3, he said, my mommy has black hair and red lips and a red nose, and she likes to stay at her office.
Oh my God.
And it's still, even repeating it now, it just breaks my heart.
Barbara, can you talk about it with him now?
Well, it's so funny because you don't see it at the time, but over the years our relationship has changed so much, and I was so there for him all these years. He's 23 now. And this is all he tells me when he writes me cards and we do stuff. You know, we have a wonderful relationship now. I'm not sure he even remembers that.
Both my kids, when they were about a year of age, was both of them, when they were learning to say mom, started calling our nanny mom, and that was kind of the biggest thing or hardest thing for me from a guilt perspective. Other than that, I think I've pretty much rolled with the punches, but that one, that one got me.
That's heartrending. Does anyone have wife guilt? Because I feel like, I have mom guilt, and that's bad, but I have a lot of wife guilt too, like I'm a bad wife.
A lot of times I think I take for granted that you don't have some of the same wife guilt that we would have had, and I'm kind of surprised sometimes that you young moms really do seem to feel you need to, do everything perfectly.
I feel very much like I need to be not only a working mom, but a perfect wife and mother too, and like a good cook and have a nice home. And, like my mother, who's a classic second wave feminist, sees how crazy I get for holidays, like with the preparing, and she's like, I sent you to college for this? Like, she doesn't understand it. But I feel like I'm actually infected with this uber perfectionism on all fronts that is actually something that our generation has more than a couple of the previous ones.
Why is that?
Yeah, I thought all the husbands are doing half.
I see on Facebook, the elaborate, we had birthday parties for our kids, but the elaborate, baking and the hand, crafting
blame Pinterest.
Now is not something we did.
Just blame Pinterest.
He's much more playful with my daughter. He's much more the, which most dads are, but he, is sort of that Disneyland dad. The guilt for me is she comes to my home and he is such an extremist with the videos and the shitty food now, which is horrible. And it's like now I have to be the bad parent and I have to be the ballast. So unfortunately, with someone of such an extreme, then I have to turn around and say no all the time.
I had all the same issues. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, and again, now that he's grown up, it's great, but he was the father to the man a lot. It's the same thing with indulging him in food and indulging him with everything and sports, to the point where I had to go to the pediatrician and say he's had a strep throat 4 times this month. He can't go to hockey practice at 5 in the morning, which his father was all into. and I had to put the brakes on so many of the things that were just done recklessly, and it's a killer. But eventually, the kid himself, knows what's right and gets it.
Hey, Jess, growing up in a similar situation to what you were just referring to, I can tell you that it might be hard to be the parent that always says no right now, but, at a later date, your daughter will thank you and appreciate you for it.
I just have to say, I don't even know you, but I just want to tell you the story that my dad, I remember once when I was about 13, my dad had us for a week, and I put on like 6 or 8 pounds in a week. And I came home, and I was 13, and I was so and my mother freaked out, and I hated her. She freaked out, and she screamed at me, and she screamed at my father, and of course once I got older, I totally understood, and I just want to say that you're parenting. That's what parenting is, and it's hard. So I don't know.
My daughter, I'm not your friend.
Yeah, exactly.
I tell her that I'm your mom and I'm your friend second. And I think the hardest thing, honestly, I think for guilt. Look, this is what I did. I saw what my mother did wrong, and I swore to God I would never do what she did. So I didn't have 3 children. I had 1 child. Okay, I show up for my kid. I see my mother and me doing certain things. I abhor it. I feel horrible, and I really quickly rectify it.
While the specifics around, the guilt that people may be feeling, whether it's Pinterest fused or something else, might differ for generations, ultimately at the core, it's always the same. Even when I talk to my mom about guilt that she had, it always centered around her feeling like she wasn't doing enough for her kids, which is, we had 7 kids in our family, so there was a major bandwidth issue. But, those issues are still the same for, any generation. So I think, the trappings around it may, vary a little bit, but ultimately the core issues are the same.
It's so easy to say, oh, things get better, or don't worry about it, or work in the present and all this stuff. But unless you live through it, are you really going to listen to another generation who experienced that? Is it really going to resonate? I mean, and then there's the beauty of just talking about it and having it be out there, which is also a very positive experience. But I'm just wondering how that actually works. It's like, do people learn from each other who have been there?
Well, I think that the only way generations are going to learn from each other, I think that, I'm sorry, Robin had a point, but I think, Robin, the thing is that it's not about telling somebody. I think it's about listening and then sharing. You know what I'm saying? I think that the way that generations will learn that are growing up, and is that we just have to have our ears open because they're asking, and they're asking sometimes just by telling. And I think that when someone shares something, then obviously now you know what they're going through, so then you can share. I think that you're right. If someone's not going through it, well, why would they want to listen? Then it just becomes you're just an old bat who's lecturing them.
For me, when I had kids and I was able to bring my kids to like my grandmother's house or my mom's house, there was something about that act of having the kids there that enlightened me to their life, gave me the ability to want to really understand their life. And honestly, one of the most joyous moments of my life has been getting to know my mom, my grandma, my aunts, all of these people as people, right? Because when you're a kid, you don't know them. They're like, you're the center of the universe, right? When you become a mother and you have kids, I think there's something about that gives you the opportunity to actually know these people as people, right? And that's been so wonderful to me to actually, know my grandmother, right? Know my mom, the good, the bad, the ugly, but know them as a person, right?
I think that's so beautiful, Kelly. And you made me laugh because, one of my moms and I, we fight all the time because she'll be mean to me about my parenting, and I'll say, Mom, you weren't so great yourself. And then we get into huge fights, and then we both have horrible mom guilt. I'm 36 years old. She still has mom guilt about me. And, of course, I have mom guilt, and we can share our mom guilt and laugh about it. And that's been really humanizing and really awesome.
I mean, have any of you actually gotten to know your mom and sort of felt like you just can't come to an understanding of why they were the way they were? I mean it. Like, do you find that you know, like I said, they, like Kelly, they you know, share what happened and all that kind of stuff, and you sometimes find yourself going, okay, like, I forgive you because it's stupid to carry all that stuff, but do you often find that, have you ever felt like, I just can't wrap my mind around that type of parenting?
I do, and I have a more extreme example than others, and when I do sort of tell the truth of what my mother was like in the non-nurture kind of a complex I grew up in, people, you know, don't want to believe it. And when I mentioned, you know, an abusive grandmother to my mother and said, why didn't you protect me? She said to me, well, I can assure you that whatever she did to you, she did worse to me.
But see, now interesting that Barbara and I have the same mother, and we were both divorced. No, I mean it. It's just interesting.
Yes, because love to me
mother.
was somebody undermining me and criticizing me. That was
Yeah.
love. Just thinking as you were talking, if I ever said to my mother, did you ever feel any guilt? She wouldn't understand what I was talking about. She was such a narcissist.
Yeah, that's my mom.
I lost my mom when I was very young. It's interesting that because I've always envied everybody who has a mom merely for the fact that they have a mom. I wasn't smart enough to look for older women at that time that could have filled the place that my mom, you know, wasn't there for. And I learned that kind of later. And I wish I had, you know, I wish I had had older women in my life. You know, in my case, I didn't have a mom. In your case, you may have needed something.
Yeah, but I married my mom. I married a mom. He taught me how to cook, and he taught me how to clean, and he told me I was pretty, and he told me I could do, I mean, he did everything that a parent should have done for me.
Mm-hmm.
So really, like, he truly, like, in a sense, partly raised me. So when we did get divorced, it was really because I was a grown-up, and grown-ups don't marry their mothers, you know. So I was like, I was ready to fly the coop in a way. But I did look for an older woman. It happened to be my ex-husband.
Yeah, it's intoxicating
It
to
is
have someone take
intoxicating.
care of you, and that's
Yes.
what I was looking for.
Yes, me too.
Okay, so stay tuned because our next Cross Generation Connect will be psychoanalyzing Jessica, Laura, and me.